Welcome to SoapBox.
Our profession loves to shoot people down. It's one of the things that I would change in a heartbeat if I could.
I'm happy to pay taxes. We pay more taxes. We pay taxes on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, national insurance, employee national insurance, corporation tax is already 20+%. Capital gains tax.
That bit I object to, but once you start structuring non-advice like this, you end up funneling people into potentially products that are going to harm them in the long term.
It's Advisor 3.0 SoapBox edition.
Welcome everyone to episode 11 of the SoapBox podcast, the little better sister to the main Advisor 3.0 podcast. I'm sure Abraham will mind me saying. We're joined today, as always, by my co-host, the wonderful Abraham, the hyperactive advisor helper, the guy who makes all of our lives easier, or tries to. And also, we've got two guests for today, which is very exciting, very unlike us. So, Victoria Hicks, CEO of Melo.
Melo, yeah. Hello from Melo.
Oh, very good. Should realise that one. And Gaynor Rigby, COO of Melo.
That's
welcome,
correct.
Guys. Welcome to the Soapbox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, in our usual way, we've been gathering all the wonderful financial topics from all over the profession in the last week or so. I think you two actually wanted to kick us off with a discussion of women in financial services, but specifically women leaders in financial services running companies. I think you've got a good positive story to tell us. Why don't you use that to introduce who you guys are, who Melo are, what you guys do? I know, much like Abraham, you're on the side of the angels when it comes to advisors, because you're here sitting our side of the desk to help us to succeed. Why don't you give us a little intro into what you guys are up to, and then we can get stuck into our first topic.
Gaynor, do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, I'll just give you a bit of my backstory and then Vicki can explain the Melo bit. So my backstory is a kind of circuitous route into financial services, with my last big gig being the managing partner of Equilibrium, which was in the Northwest. And we went on a 10 times journey. So took our assets under management from just over 100 million to over $1 billion. We took our model portfolios and launched them as funds, and top 10 top companies to work for. I have to get that in the right order. For the last 5 years that I was there, and great client retention, investors and customers, all of those accolades. So my background isn't in financial services, but kind of come at it with a more of a business hat, growth and scaling up hat. Vicki, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm the CEO at Melo. I've been in financial services since I was 22 actually. I started to qualify, became one of Openwork's youngest advisors. Coincidentally, when I was working for Openwork and starting out as an advisor, the CEO of Openwork at the time was Marianne McIntyre, who is now the CEO of Amber River, who we're going to talk about a little bit today. Not to claim that I would have known Marianne at my time at Openwork, but of course, coming into financial services and having a female CEO when you launch your career in finance is really something to look up to. So I progressed. I was one of the owners of a beautiful chartered firm over in York. We exited at the end of 2018. And I brought my skill set then into the world of mergers and acquisitions, and wanted to sit on the seller's side, wanted to work for financial advisors, not just to help them sell their firms, but to help them build the right succession path and the right exit route out. We rebranded as Melo a couple of years ago and launched a growth arm to the business as well, and brought on some exceptional people such as Gaynor. So really pleased to be here today.
Well, thank you for that helpful introduction. You've mentioned some places in the north of England that I couldn't even apologize for being very, very southern. And Vicki, also, I always thought I was very early into financial services because I started at 24, I think, but 22 definitely beats me. So well done.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive.
I had my little Renault Clio. I had my AA route planner maps, you know, when you've printed them out on the bits of paper. And I've been going around doing meetings at 8:30 at night. Yeah, I earned my stripes like we all did in those days.
Yeah, so my Renault Clio when I was first an advisor was mauve.
Lovely. Very nice. Yes, the colour of the 90s.
And just a plug for what you call, Matt, the big sister of this podcast. Vicki is on the main podcast, my interview with Vicki, which went deeper into a journey, as an advisor and of course, starting Melo. So I know you called it big sister. In fairness, actually, we've analyzed the pod. We've looked at the listenership to the main pod and to SoapBox. They are neck and neck. Of course, the main pod's got 137 episodes. This has only got 11. So my take from that is that people want to listen to me, whether I do it with you, Matt, or like with other people. I am the constant.
I am the constant. Love
right,
that.
Excellent. Right, listen, you two, before Abraham gets to blowing smoke up his own fundament, let's get you guys talking about this. So, Vicki, you introduced your connection to Amber River. Why don't you talk us through where you see financial services in terms of the position of leadership and what's going on?
Actually, what interests me is even stepping up a layer above financial services, right? And just taking a look at investment in general. So really simply, when I think about, private equity investment and what is it all about, it's all about growing the businesses of the future, right? And so from that basis, you go, well, who's accessing this money? Who's accessing this capital to grow the future of business, be that in financial services or in any other area? And whilst I think we're seeing like a heap of improvement now, certainly amongst privately owned businesses, we're seeing a lot of female leaders. We're seeing more females step up into board positions of, some of the consolidators. We're absolutely nowhere near, sort of a form of parity on that basis. And then when you take that further and you look into, well, who's accessing investment, what percentage of money is going to all female boards, to mixed boards and to male boards, I don't know what the answer is and I don't know the why, but we're not going there. We're not putting ourselves forwards at that sort of level. And I suppose it's for us to kick around today and to sort of have a little chat about the reasons that we think that might not be the case. But in 2019, I was a lady with a business plan starting my exit firm. Mary Ann was a lady with a business plan starting Amber River. And I think sometimes people think that there's something that makes them not human or not like us. Well, they can do it, but why would I be able to do it? And she was a lady with a business plan a few years ago, just like I was. And you hear so much negativity around, consolidation and some of the larger players, and the way that people act out there is not great. There's a lot of mudslinging that happens at times, and she's gone about this with a quiet resolve. She's never made it about her. And in my view, having worked, as you guys know, we're sell side, but through an open market search, we've done quite a bit of work with Amber River. For example, 4 of their hub firms across the UK we'd put in place. And the business model behind it was, she'd never wavered with the business model, despite war and COVID and consumer duty. The business model was about empower ambitious, great regional practices to grow. And that's absolutely, what she's done. So when I hear the negativity out there around, is big bad and is small the way, actually, I've got experience not just of selling into a business like Amber River, but of seeing those firms go all the way through their earnouts, seeing their people develop, seeing new leaders come through. And so it's a success story on so many levels. But the reason I want to highlight it more so is because for me, it just shows us like people are more capable than I think that they realize. And there's so much opportunity out there. And for me, as a female in business, I do not want to be given a seat because I make up a number. I don't want to be positively discriminated against at all. And it's not been that with, but what is it? What is it that's sort of stopping the, ladies from going for that extra level of investment? Because it doesn't become about trying to get the numbers to balance. It becomes, actually a real economic benefit, right? If we're looking at the world around us and everything that we know and everything we can touch, and so much of it has been created through a lot of male influence in growing these businesses and having the capital to build these great big businesses. What if we've got this huge part that's untapped? And actually, it's not about one taking over from the other. It's about untapping and unbridling the ambition of a whole group of people. And that's one of the reasons I think Gaynor and I get on so well is Gaynor not to talk for her, she'll talk for herself, but loves business and came from that background within Strategic Coach of working with these amazing entrepreneurs from all over the world and just seeing that they've all got the same challenges, but with the right support around them. Actually, anybody's capable of doing anything. It shouldn't be a agenda thing.
So yeah, Gaynor, I mean, do you want to carry on unpacking that? And what do you see as the reasons why there's this gap?
It's an interesting one because you don't want to fall into stereotypes, but I think there is a level of that occurs, whether it be women with ambition get different labels. Maybe men get labeled ambitious and forthright and outspoken, and women with the same characteristics get labeled bossy and uncompromising and audacious, I think I've been referred to, which I actually took as a compliment, but you could take it the other way. And whether that's just that level of scrutiny is hard, or people don't want to put themselves in the firing line. And I just think also the number of other things that women still, unfortunately, are managing, juggling is like, you've only got a certain amount of energy and effort, and you have to decide strategically where that goes. And maybe that's one of the reasons people decide, the outcome or building. They get great lifestyle businesses, but maybe not much beyond that because of what they feel is at stake. So,
yeah, interesting. I mean, is it a problem that we don't have? I guess the question is where does it exist? Is it the issue that we have far too few women in financial services, full stop, and therefore there's a lack of supply, if you like, or is it that it typically is the men that control the capital from an investment side, from the other side? So is it an issue that side that they're not looking at the right businesses, or or maybe just because it's an old boys club in terms of where this capital is being deployed into? Which side of the coin is it, or is it both? Do we need to fix both before we can do anything more?
Or does it even all start way before that? With school. It is really challenging to try to work it out, and I always say to my guys internally, we do really well for female-owned businesses, as you would expect, because being such a female-led organisation ourselves, we attract in female clients. And I'm not going to say anything sort of exclusively all women's businesses are better, right? But if I was to look on balance at the privately owned firms, women run better businesses. However, on balance, the men would run bigger businesses. And that's not when you get into the actual, taking on investment and stuff like that. I'm talking at a privately owned level. And so then, you start to sort of just think, well, what is that? And why is that? Is it because we've got more perfectionist qualities, and actually to start to grow and scale, things get outside of our control. And so, within our own sort of reach, we can control this, and we can keep this really beautiful. I always remember reading things when I was younger that said, I'm even a little bit talking about these sorts of things because I never want to make it about gender, because I'm surrounded by amazing men and I've got amazing boys that I'm raising. But you'd read stuff like if a man looks at a job description and goes, well, 70% of that I can do, great, I'm chucking myself in, I'm going for that interview. And a lady will go, oh, actually, there's that one little bit that I've not done before. And then, maybe I'd best not go for that. Right. And that's not men holding women back. That's not because they hold the purse strings or anything like that. I genuinely think there's some element of something that goes way back. As I said, not exclusively, but there's a pattern, right? When you're looking and you're seeing, I think 80% of private equity investment goes to an all-male board, 15% goes to a blended board, 5% goes to a all-female board, right? that isn't, I don't think, because the men are sat there going, do not let women in this room, but what is it? And I don't know. But I think more success stories, more promoting of these amazing stories and showing people that, look at this lady, she's built a business from a business plan to $1 billion in the last 7 or 8 years. I think just more of that, more of these successes, more of this normalizing of it, then, it starts to take effect. But is it something we could just solve in the next year or so? No.
So I'll get my 2 pens in, Vicki and Gaynor. I like your title for this segment or this discussion, which is from zero to $1 billion valuation. Just for for our audience, Amber River, as you said, started 2019, thereabouts 2018, and it's just been valued by Stone Point Capital for $1 billion, which is like 900 million. I always like this kind of mental gymnastics that go on when a US business is trying to value a UK business. The UK business wants to be regarded as a what's the word I'm looking for? A £1 billion, billion unicorn.
Yeah.
The Americans, the Americans maybe don't want to pay that much, and you end up with this valuation in dollars. Anyway, I am guessing that's what went on in the background. Amber River started life as Socium, as you might know, now has 330 advisors up and down the country, 13 regional offices, and entrusted with £15 billion of client assets. So it is an incredible journey with this business of building an incredible business. And that's great. But I am not sure that I'm not sure that it helps this problem that we are talking about much, which is about visibility for female-led companies and businesses. We have a gender issue in financial services, no doubt about that. Then we have a gender issue in leadership, about business leadership generally. We just need more visibility of, I don't know. I have 3 daughters. I think they're more likely to associate success with being a woman or being a woman with business success if they saw more women on being visible in business. It's just the way it is. And you have this even compounded issue, not that it's with minority ethnic women leaders generally. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. I say that I probably disagree with nearly everything Kemi Badenoch says as a politician. I vehemently disagree with her, but I love being on TV. I just want the TV to be muted. So visibility is important, Vicki. We need to see more women leaders, not just building. We know they are building. If you search enough, they are building. I first heard about you, Gaynor, a couple of years ago when your old shop, your firm was, shooting into the limelight, and you've done incredible work, on this visibility point. We just need more of it. I'm not sure it solves the problem, but, my 2 pence will be, we need to hear more voices. We need to hear more stories of women's building incredible businesses in financial services and beyond. So congrats to the incredible work she's done. Let's get her on the podcast and she can tell us the story. I'm sure it's been.
But, we're talking there, aren't we, about, you speak about these success stories because you create visibility. But what if actually a part of the success story is the way that she conducts herself, and that ability to block out the noise, let let all them do their thing over there because I've got my head down doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and look, it's probably styles as well, isn't it? It's Paradigm Norton CEO Philippa Han.
Yes, she's doing great stuff.
Yeah, she's doing brilliant stuff. She's out there publicly being the face of the leadership team of that business, which is a great business, and she's a great CEO. So, you know, that what might suit her maybe doesn't suit Marianne. I don't know, but you are right. You need to see the success. Don't you? Or you need others to be able to see those success stories, to be able to just feel that it's possible, and then start to connect and network and find out where the supply of capital and the networking opportunities and the mentoring, which is another big thing. I don't know what Philippa does about that. I think actually, Abraham, we challenged her on that, didn't we, when she came on, just to say that, you know, you need to mentor as many people as you possibly can because of who you are and your visibility and your position. So, yeah, I mean, I think all of those are important. You're absolutely right, Vicki. Please hear you say that we can't solve it in the next year. I'm slightly worried you were going to try and solve it on this podcast, but there's definitely several things that we can all do, I suspect. And visibility to me is a huge, huge one.
Yeah, there are a few we need more. There are a few great women leaders in financial planning. Joe French, who leads Ativo,
yes,
Advisor 3.0, speaking, and she said she enjoyed it. So, yeah, you know, more of that, please. More of that.
Yeah. I think the mentoring piece, actually, that you mentioned, Matt's really interesting, because I think that those people that are exiting, those people that are coming to the end of their careers or they've sold, I think we could do loads around the mentoring there. I remember speaking to Tracy from the CISI a few years ago, and I said to her, you know, there's so much consolidation going on. What would you love to see through this? And she said to me, I'd love to see people passing on their knowledge as well as passing on their business. And when so many people have built businesses in financial planning, they love financial planning. They've built a great business, but they love financial planning as well. And it can be hard when you get to the end of, like, who am I? What's my purpose? What am I going to do next? And can you imagine, actually, if we could really stimulate those people to be amazing mentors to the next generation, because there are skills that were learned in the 80s and the 90s for people that are exiting now that aren't taught today, such as trying to drive with printed out AA route planners. Crash.
But you're giving me flashbacks now to the start of my career.
What was Philippa's response when you kind of pushed back on the fact that she should be mentoring more? What was the response to that?
So it's a good one. I think there's not an awareness of how you go about doing it. I know we've talked on the pod about this in the past, so I do it with the CII, but anytime I mention that to anyone, people say, I wasn't aware the CII have a mentoring program that you can get involved with. I think actually they're refreshing that at the moment. It's either that or no one's choosing me as a mentor. I mean, maybe that's a good thing. There's better options now if it's a bit more public. But yeah, and in fact, Paula Brown, Abraham was on, wasn't she?
Yeah,
she's great. She said that they were refreshing it at the moment. So I think it's knowing how to do it, because it's really difficult, isn't it? You can't just put yourself out there and say, I'll mentor anyone, because you'd probably get 500 people want mentoring all of a sudden. But so there has to be structures in place. It has to be made easy. These are often busy senior women in financial services. You know, you've got to make it easy to do. It's got to be something you can just log in and do, rather than expecting them to do it themselves, I think. And our professional bodies have a huge role to play here, right? I mean, they, you know, I won't name which one. I'm a member of 3 different ones, but I walked away from the last national conference I went to for one of the professional bodies because it was just, frankly, the same people speaking about the same things, and they all look like me. You know, much as that's comforting, I'm not going to learn anything in that kind of environment. So there are some really important structural things that could be changed, tweaked really easily. Abraham does a brilliant job with Advisor 3.0 in terms of getting a diversity of voices on those stages. The Planex guys, I know, refuses to speak on any panel unless it's at least 50-50 gender split. So he just won't accept invites to speak. And those guys do good work as well with their conference. So It feels like it is happening, but it maybe just isn't happening fast enough. And, we do need to get on with this stuff.
You do have to be intentional about it. And I'll say this. I have never been turned down more by speakers, than when we go to women practitioners. We just have more turn down rates, if you see what I mean. So if I went to 5 blokes and I said, can you speak at Advisor 3.0 or any other platform, I guarantee you 6 of them are going to say yes.
Why do you think?
Why
do the women turn you down? Do you know why?
Well, I mean, generally, as you know, men like the voice of the sound of their own voice. I couldn't think of any other reason. Women, even when we know they're, competent and they build great businesses, they're far more likely to say, I'm not blaming the victim in this equation. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And we've had feedback. Some feedback that we've had is like, maybe try and change the format. So for instance, someone might be more likely to do a sit down conversation as opposed to standing up and do a keynote. So trying to kind of change the format, trying different formats, maybe an interview format as opposed to a keynote or whatever. So all of these things we have to just, take into account when you're designing and thinking about this.
Maybe you should poll them next time you're doing, just to see what the actual issue is. I would be curious to know what that is. I'm like, is it like they're just too busy? Is it a confidence thing? Is it a, preparing if you think you're going to have to do a keynote? Is it, well, my story's not interesting? Like, where is it falling? I'd be curious to see what that is.
Yeah.
So will I. Yeah, let's tell Anna to get onto that. Absolutely. Yeah, good.
Because it possibly like links into what we were saying earlier on, right? Like women going and seeking investment, like you're pitching, you like Dragon's Den, you've got your deck and you go in and you're in, and you're speaking to people. And, we know it's not a confidence in their abilities, because the strength of some of the women running these businesses is incredible, right? And in their own domain, they will be, super confident women. But is there then a confidence piece, like you maybe mentioned, Gaynor, around actually putting themselves out there? And let's be real as well, right? Our profession loves to shoot people down. It's one of the things that I would change in a heartbeat if I could. When we all recognize our own places within this, when we all recognize that actually the real travesty is the fact that we're dealing with 9% of adults, that's the problem. And actually, if we work together to not saying everyone's just going to get on, it's going to be happy clappy, but actually to deliver a message out there to society that financial planning is where it's at and what you need to be taking. And I think sometimes it's just that fear that somebody's going to say something, somebody's going to shoot them down, somebody's going to put a negative comment on a post. One negative comment on a post can ruin your day or your week. But I don't think people think like that when they're kind of doing that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of scrutiny. I mean, we just saw it with Andy Burnham's wife, right? She's an accomplished lady in her own self, and the critique on what dress she wore in her tummy or something was like absurd and ridiculous. So we unfortunately do still lilt towards, hang on, really? That's what we want to be talking about? There's bigger things. I think to your point, Vicki, there's bigger things afoot that we actually need to be talking about, and we should be encouraging each other across the board to be sending that message out and being proud about our stories.
There you go, fixed. So moving on to some of the other topics that have been tabled for today, some of the newsy items. I'm sure you guys will have a view on this because you're very tech focused with support and the growth story that you're trying to sell into advice firms and trying to get them to develop. There were a couple in the news this week. Vanguard, who had only withdrew from giving financial advice in the UK, last year, Abraham? Something like that. You'll tell us in a minute. They have launched a service actually just 2 days ago as we're recording. So just at the end of July, launched a service under the new FCA's version of targeted support. So we can kick around what that means. And so they are now to people who are on their personal investor platform. They're giving targeted support. So they'll ask a structured series of questions and take you down a route and give you what I would call, because I'm old, simplified advice at the end of that process. And then on the same theme, we saw JP Morgan doing another write down on their investment in Nutmeg, which I'm going to keep calling Nutmeg, even though it hasn't been Nutmeg for the last 4 years. It's been JP Invest or something stupid. So just really interesting in that space. And I think everyone on this call, we're all sort of from the more traditional financial advice, human as the advisor kind of side of the industry. But interesting to see these big guys, US guys with very deep pockets, still not really managing to make it work. Views?
Who wants to go first?
Well, Abraham's desperate to go
Go
first.
on, Abraham. No, Abraham. You're first.
Well, I mean, look, I think that, Vanguard doing, targeted support is a good thing. I think that, as that article says, I don't know which version you're looking at. I'm looking at it in the FT Advisor. Vanguard targeted support goes live. Liz Waldron, who is the head of client experience and product, said, our targeted support service is designed to remove those barriers by helping people take their first step with confidence. So 70% of people don't have the confidence to invest money. And so if Vanguard can make a difference to that, they've introduced questionnaires and things like that to help people take that first step and invest. Absolutely, bring it on. Let other providers do that. The question that often comes up is this a threat to financial advisors if all you do is to give people questionnaires or show them their statements? Well, you're disrupted anyway, so never mind Vanguard. So I don't think this is any threat to proper financial planning for people, who have bigger wealth, if you like. So I'm not worried about that. But to your point about Nutmeg still not profitable, and JP Morgan, put £80 million just in the latest financial year. Well, it just goes to show, and Nutmeg now has 11 billion, right? It just goes to show that this thing about taking investment advice or low-level investment advice, call it that, to the mass market is a game for deep-pocketed organizations. So if anyone can, Vanguard can. JP Morgan, hopefully, maybe can. It's not the game that we're playing as, deeply personalized financial planning businesses. That's just not the game we're playing. And for all the talk about solving the advice gap, I want us to expand our proposition to serve more people. But I'm sorry, that model is not for, 20, 50,000 pounds ISAs. It's just not for, it's not for that. So call me a capitalist, but it's the reality of this game.
But they don't need it either. It's not just that they're missing out on that level of sort of deep financial planning. It's what's appropriate for different sections of the population, what age they are and what they have. I think with Nutmeg, and I'll call it Nutmeg as well, because I didn't even know they'd changed the name.
4 years. 4 years.
4 years. But then the last 4 years has gone like that as well. I'm still living in 2016, so, But I sometimes think with businesses, you can have a great business. It's just the wrong time. And with a Nutmeg relies on awareness from consumers, and it relies on them doing it themselves. And the advice gap always makes me laugh, right? Because we all talk about the advice gap in our world. If I went out onto the streets of Leeds and asked 100 people to tell me about the advice gap, they'd look at me like I'd grown two heads. Nobody knows what the advice gap is, right? That's the first problem. We've actually got to start to get people's mindsets into even thinking that that life is that they need the finances to go along with the lives that they need to live, and then when they're going through inflection points in life or they're going through key things, then they should take advice. And unless we do the work, what happened was you had a load of businesses going, we're going to solve the advice gap, and the rest of the population going, we don't even know what a bloody advice gap is. So but where I think we are now is we've had a couple of things. We've had huge improvements in tech, which all of a sudden make these things accessible. There is more talk now about finance in general. I think I notice now more of the sort of younger people engaging in finance, whether they're talking about things we're comfortable talking about. Quite often they maybe want to talk about crypto, or they want to talk about stuff that's not like the traditional route. They're talking about finance, right? So there's more engagement. I think people are using AI and stuff like that a lot more to ask questions. That sort of thing actually is where we start to address the advice gap, because then all of a sudden people know that there is one, right? So then it's right, now we've got the people that want the stuff. But as Abraham said, financial planners, they cannot offer their service to everybody. Financial planning, M&A, it's always just been about selling on and recycling the same 9% of clients. And maybe it moved from 8.9% to 9.1% or something, right? But everyone's just buying and selling those same clients and looking after those same clients. So my view is we absolutely need things like targeted support. I think the FCA or somebody was talking the other day about them maybe bringing in a level 2 qualification, right? And suddenly advisors, now Abraham, we're going to disagree, my dear. We're going to disagree.
Excellent. Finally,
because we're going to disagree because it's proportionate to the advice that is being provided. It is no slight on the people that are chartered. I got chartered. I went further. I went down the step route, right? Because the clients that I was looking after and the clients that I wanted to target, they had that sort of need. We are desperately short of people that are offering something, right? Not full financial planning, maybe financial advice, maybe financial guidance, whatever it is. But if you're in a targeted support business, so you only deal with things that look like this in this box, and then from there, they'd go elsewhere if they didn't fit in that box, then why should we not have easier routes in so we can have more people advising at that level? What then maybe happens is actually those level 2 advisors, they're ambitious and they want to qualify and they want to do level 4 and then they want to become financial planners. Maybe then they become our training ground again, like the banks and the building societies were pre-RDR. They're why we have such a leadership drought today, because people stopped, these banks and building societies stopped training people. So we'll disagree, Abraham. Do I think that should be the standard for everybody? Absolutely not. I think that actually we should have a standard maybe of chartered for people who are offering a certain type of advice. I don't think level 4 goes far enough. But do I think that a level 2 kind of GCSE level would work for really simplistic scenarios? I think it could.
What would you call them? This level 2 qualified non-financial advisors?
Financial guide, I don't know. I don't know because I've not looked enough into what do they end up with as a result of that.
Would you also like to be treated by a level 2 qualified doctor or level 2 qualified nurse or level 2, qualified barrister?
Well, if you've got a scratch, probably yes.
Yeah, totally depends. I don't want a break.
Not if I'm having a heart attack, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But we don't call them nurses, care work. Yeah, sorry. I'm not trying to be like, elitist here. But the idea that, we're going to bring, let's be clear. The qualification to be a financial advisor today is equivalent to spending 1 year at the university. That's level 4. You can do, and there already are, myriads of other people doing things, money coaches and money guides or whatever. So that's not really a conversation about, to me, that's not really a conversation about bringing, a different level of qualification for financial advisors. For financial advice, regulated advice, I would rather the bar stays where it is or go higher. You can throw other things, money guide, whatever into the equation that already exists. There is no, maybe, I don't know, maybe put a framework around it. Sure. So, but I don't think that this is necessarily just this so-called advice gap is just necessarily a question of just throwing more people at the problem. Technology exists. We talk about one financial advice business being valued at $1 billion.
Yeah.
Right? I like to say £1 billion, please, but okay. Let me tell you another financial services business that's just been recently valued at $1 billion, I think. It's called Moneybox, which is an online financial app for people to invest, to plan. They use our plan for retirement. They're stepping into mortgages. So if you want to add human support to that, sure, add human support. Make sure they're qualified for the level of support that they're giving people. I think there is already a regulated construct, if I'm not misguided, where a company can certify people who are doing some kind of regulatory activity internally without them being listed as financial advisor or investment professional. So I don't really understand the problem we're trying to solve by using a lower level of qualification and a lower tier of professionals into the mix. I'm not sure how I get how that solve the advice gap challenge, but I could be wrong, and it's coming up from you, Vicki, so I need to think about it a little bit more.
And I think you're both right at the risk of playing peacemaker.
Come on, don't sit on the fan.
I like it on the fence. It's nice and high up here. I think one of the problems is with language, right? So the regulator talks about the advice gap. It's not really a gap from an advice perspective. Advice is not what those people need. I think guidance to me, and therefore coaching and targeted support. None of those words include the word advice, right? It isn't an advice gap. It's a help gap. That's the issue. I think probably, being absolutely honest, 9%, maybe 10% is probably about right for the UK population for actually needing advice, as I would consider advice. And Abraham, where you're right, is actually, I'm not sure we necessarily need that much human intervention if it's support. Coaching you do, because if you're coaching someone out of a debt problem, or you're coaching them to sort out income and expenditure, or to live the right life that they dream of living, and money's a part of that, yes, that's probably at the moment best done at the moment by humans. All the support stuff is probably best most delivered with tech. Just looking at the Vanguard, the new service, really it's just the bot walking you through risk, comfort with risk level, how long till retirement, basic goals. It is not really, none of that stuff's advice. None of that stuff needs a human. My one big objection actually to the Vanguard process is they are defaulting through this process all of their customers into their target retirement date funds, and this will horrify Abraham.
That's
so as long as you're 40 or below, you can have 80% equities, but that very rapidly steps down, and by the time you're retired, you're sort of 30% equities, which is that's a throwback to, we weren't doing that within a couple of years of me starting in the profession. That bit I object to. When you start to, and maybe it's inevitable to a degree, but once you start structuring non-advice like this, you end up funneling people into potentially products that are going to harm them in the long term.
Is anything better than nothing, though?
I don't know. I guess let's come back in 10 years' time and we'll find out if a load of people
rather they're in 60-40 portfolio than cash or not investing at all. If those are the alternatives, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and look, maybe that is the role for government in this. Nudges. I mean, I don't like the ISA reforms, and with all the mess that they've made of charging 22% tax on interest on cash in stocks and shares ISAs. I mean, it's just a nonsense. However, what they were aiming for, which was behavioural change, trying to limit people who need to be in equities from keeping so much in cash, trying to limit this massive sort of wall of cash that the UK population have built up in their tax-free savings accounts. Maybe that's where the right nudges implemented better might get us over the line on those. What does everyone want to chat about now? Can we chat about pet nups? Is now the appropriate time to bring in my favourite subjects?
Your time has come, Matt.
No, I've been everything else that we talked about up until this point. I've just basically been bated breath waiting to talk about this one. So this was a story that was in the financial press this week, which is, I'm sure there's some provider that's run the survey behind it with some axe to grind, but I just loved it. Is this the rise of pets being included in prenups for couples who are getting married? So who gets Bobby the boxer if the divorce goes through? And what particularly piques my interest, because actually we were working with a retired couple this week on their estate planning and actually their wills and LPAs, and the only bone of contention was who was going to have the dog out of their two adult children. That was the one thing that was preventing them writing their letter of wishes to go along with a will, because they were saying, the dog's worth quite a lot of money. And I was thinking, well, at his age, I think he's probably a little bit more of a financial liability, to be perfectly honest. It really problematic.
Well, in the sense of like who was getting it or who didn't want it?
Who's getting it? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could go either way, couldn't it? Maybe one of the kids
I didn't want a dog.
I want it.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised it's taken this long to come. Like, it's such a major part of so many people's households. Like, let me just ask you guys, so who here has a dog? Do you?
I don't.
No. Oh, you see, I have a dog, so I'm probably going to come at this from a different angle to you guys. But I think touch wood, I don't have to go through a divorce, but it would be quite a major part of, who's getting what, for sure. And I think my husband's like shouting across the office now. He would want the dog. He'd tell me I had to keep the cat. So I can see it.
But I've heard of people, though, with pets where they do almost like children. It's like you get them the dog one week and then it switches, or you get them on this weekend, or you get one weekend a month.
Good. Can't be good for the dog.
And the dog literally goes between two homes.
I was going to use another word to describe this discussion, but haven't heard you, Vicki and Gaynor, about it. I will reserve my comment. I have no comment whatsoever about this topic. I mean, like, I used to have a dog as a child, but I don't. Yes. Oh, God. Oh, no.
Listen, Vicki, I know a very good lawyer if you need one. If you need to you can get a post-nup now, so you can get a pet post-nup and make sure you get the right one out of the cat and the dog.
Why do these need to be their own standalone? Like, should they not just form part of the prenup, post-nup, or do we need a specific animal one?
Yeah, no, so I think that's the point. I think they've been left out, and there's been a lot of legal wranglings over these kind of things. Let's not even get onto the subject of the people who leave all of their estate to their cat, and the cat ends up being a millionaire and living a life of luxury, and they cut the kids out.
That's it. And I think there was it Ant McPartlin and his wife? They had a high-profile divorce, and I think it was Lisa, and a lot of that was around their dog and custody of the dog. But in their scenario, you see, they'd not had children. And I think they'd struggled. And so you can understand, like, how, I mean, a dog's always a member of the family, but in some scenarios, actually even more so if they've struggled in other areas.
This is first world problem. Let's move on.
We're living in the first world, so there's still our problems, Abraham. Honestly, listen, I've got the ashes of 2 dead guinea pigs, and that's all I've got to pass on. So sure my daughter would have a view on whether I own them as well.
They're a bit big to flush down the toilet, aren't they?
For my news choices, but there you go. Vicky's proof positive that you need to sort these things out. I think it's important.
Yeah. It should form a part of financial planners' fact finds as well. Actually, I'd go even further.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Must speak to the FCA
I just assumed
about
all
it.
financial planners were doing that already.
Yeah.
I've
actually never seen in a financial plan the cost of veterinary care as a pet is getting older, but it's a lot in some scenarios. So yeah, more focus on the pet.
I knew I'd have an ally, Abraham. Go on. What do you want to talk about then?
Well, I want to talk about the Adam Smith Institute, which is, you should know, it's a right-wing, I guess it's called, think tank. They've just published what they call Millionaire Tracker, which basically says, the latest one shows that UK has fewer millionaires than we did in the great financial crisis of 2008. Back in 2020, I think just before COVID, we had over 1 million individuals in the UK who are worth more than £1 million in 2025 price level, if you like. And that's just declined progressively. I mean, the rate at which it's declined is mind-boggling from that peak. It is now sitting at just over 442,000 people. So that's like more than 50% decline from the peak. So more that, so 442,000 people in this country, individuals in this country now, count as millionaires. And they say that, this decline is driven by falling real asset price. I struggle with that concept because everything has gone up higher than inflation. They say low household savings rate. Again, okay. And then they talk about emigration of high net worth individuals. They say millionaires are leaving the UK for a number of reasons, including a lack of confidence in the British business environment, high levels of current taxation, threat of further increases, including a wealth tax, abolition of non-dom regime, and a culture which is hostile to wealth creators. So I guess the question is, are we driving wealth creators out of this country? Should we care? And does it even matter?
Yes. I was trying to remember the three questions. Yeah. I mean, this is terrible. Right. So pre-COVID, so one of the things I wonder whether it's a factor in this, right, is pre-COVID, I don't think I'd ever used Zoom or Teams. And actually what COVID kind of showed a lot of people was there's a different way to work, right? And sometimes I sit here thinking I could do my job from anywhere. Why on earth am I choosing North Leeds? I still don't know the answer to that. So I wonder if some of it's an ease now of improvements in technology and actually the ability to move overseas. But it's not just going to be that. It's going to be other things that push you into going, well, now I can do it from overseas. I may as well. And I think it is the lack of confidence in the business environment and how hard it is to grow a business. Like the corporation tax now at 25%. The allowances towards national insurance, they may as well not exist. The rights that workers have now, look, I'm not suggesting that people should have rights, but the rights that workers have now from day one, it makes taking on people a risk, not an investment, not a potential opportunity, let's see if it works, but a financial risk. So I think that there are all of those factors at play, but, money makes the world go round. And if they're not getting the revenues that they need because more of those millionaires move away, then what happens? Well, they try to find the revenue elsewhere, or services get cut. So nobody's going to benefit from us not, one, having the millionaires to actually support the economy, and two, going back to what we were saying earlier on with Amber River representation, like people looking and going, oh my God, like, get me to the UK. That is the place. They're building amazing businesses. They've got loads of stuff going on. Like we don't have that. So it's like a myriad of issues, but it's absolutely a problem.
So yeah. I'm happy to get off the fence, Nora, unless you've
no, go on.
I have a real issue with this actually. Do you remember? I think it was a year or so ago, there was a lot of press headlines about all the millionaires fleeing UK, and there was a massive reduction in them, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. All the papers led with it because I guess it was just free, easy copy. It turned out it had been drummed up by a small little firm dealing with expats out of Henley-on-Thames, who couldn't back their figures up at all. Coverage it generated in the media was huge, disproportionate completely to the quality of the research. And eventually it came out they'd got an intern to do a count of people on LinkedIn or something. It really was as pathetic as that in terms of the basis. Now, look, Adam Smith Institute say they've based it on ONS data, so you would hope that their data was a little bit more robust. But I always worry with these I think you've got to look at who's funding, particularly these think tanks, and then that's that can be right wing, left wing. It doesn't really matter. You've got to look at where's the money coming from. Adam Smith Institute, in particular, has got some very interesting funding streams from some organisations that probably, as a society, we've all decided we're fairly against. Tobacco, oil. And in the case, I suspect, of this kind of stuff, people who are very wealthy, still living in the UK and would quite like to pay less tax, thank you very much. Doesn't mean the research is wrong, but I do worry that sometimes this stuff gets confected so that it generates a headline and tries to nudge government through public pressure, towards making changes to the tax system. Vicki, you make a really good point, which is actually if you build a business, well, not only when you're building a business, but when you come to exit your business, the tax regime we've got in this country is still ridiculously easy to escape tax when you sell the business, because you really only have to leg it overseas for a short period of time and you can receive the proceeds of a business sale completely tax-free, depending on where you go. So I think probably that's a bigger issue, but that won't be in the headlines from Adam Smith Institute. They're not going to say, well, actually our big problem is we're not taxing people as they exit businesses at all. That's not how they're going to spin it. There you go. Is that sufficiently off the fence for you, Abraham?
Sure. It's wrong also,
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Do you have a take?
Highly recommend a podcast by Ian Dunt on think tanks, actually, which is very good. Just the deep dive in terms of all these institutions that have popped up and are influencing political thought with quite a lot of dark money behind them.
And there's a good book called Factfulness, which is about stats and how they get perceived in the press. And actually, there's levels of questions that you probably need to ask to get to the nub of actually what it is telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great book recommendation. Actually, that's I think it's up on the shelves. Yeah, it's well worth. It's Hans Rosling, isn't it?
Yes.
And he's behind Our World in Data, which actually, if you want good stats about what's going on in the world, that's a brilliant website to go and find.
What do you think then, Abraham?
Well, I like your point, Matt. The only, and I know this, agency that you referred to, and I know about all the furor around, they couldn't back up the data. But what I could not find is whether anything that proves the contrary. Do you see what I mean? Do we have any data? Okay, you say theirs is wrong. Do we have any data that shows that no, millionaires aren't living? And I have not been able to get my hands on that one. The Adam Smith Institute's data seem to come out of the ONS data. It seems to be based on the ONS data. And the disparity is so wide. I am trying to imagine, let's say they're wrong by 20% or by 30%, just adding margins of error. It just seems so wide that something feels wrong here. And this is where I insert myself into this equation. As an entrepreneur who came to this country with £300 spending money from my dad, and I have decent command of English language. That's all I had. I couldn't help but think about how different the environment feels for entrepreneurship in this country than when I first arrived fresh off the boat 20 years ago. You know, admitted, so this was in 2005, admitted it was the run up to the, great financial crisis. Greed is good, but possibility felt like a real thing. Yeah. You can smell it, taste it in the air, that people want to get on and want to build stuff and want to succeed and all of that stuff. And maybe I'm just old and lazy 20 years later, but the news that comes out constantly is, to me, anti-capitalism and anti-entrepreneurship. And, if you have money or business or whatever valued beyond a certain amount, even if you have no money in the bank, then, you've done something wrong and the government should take so much percentage of it. And I didn't realize this until recently. I noticed that every time I go to a destination, Dubai, Cyprus, and indeed the USA, 6 months later, I get some email in my inbox, that looks to come from the government or the authority of the city. It could be complete fictitious, saying something like, we have targeted support for entrepreneurs if you wanted to move to a different country or whatever thing. And I'm like, what is this? And it's only recently that I started thinking, could this be? It sounds plausible to me that all these cities are targeting entrepreneurs. Maybe it's a mail shot, maybe it's a scam, I don't know. But and I've spoken to some other entrepreneurs. I spoke to a guy whose name, a VC firms who invested in us was considering an investment in another founder, and they asked me to speak to them and give them good credibility and all that. So the phone rings. I looked at the number. It's odd, but I was expecting a call. So introduce himself. This guy founded this incredible business in Cambridge. The name of the business had Cambridge in front of it. And then he says to me, I live in Dubai now. I'm speaking to you from Dubai. And these, VCs are trying to invest in our business. And we went on and had a great conversation. And then I dropped the phone and I thought to myself, what a shame. What a shame that a great business, now capital is flowing into this business, but the guys is living in Dubai or whatever. I wondered what went wrong there. I don't know. But look, I think we need to be, I don't know if these stats are true, are correct. And they can be, misused. But we better be damn sure that we're not creating an environment that leads to wealth creators living. I'm happy to pay taxes. We pay more taxes. We pay taxes on everything. Yeah, national insurance, employee national insurance, corporation tax is already 20+%. Capital gains tax, the highest rate of tax I work out if you're an entrepreneur but taking income as salary. I work it out. It is 63%. You pay 15% employer national insurance. You pay 2% employee national insurance, then you pay 45%. Look, and now we're talking about taxing on unrealized gains. And maybe we should separate wealth in terms of productive asset businesses that are employing people from assets that are not doing so. I don't know. But this idea that we can just keep piling taxes upon taxes and making them more complicated. Find me data that shows that we're not losing people to this.
Yeah.
Matt, please.
And we're losing the good people as well, aren't we? It's not like just a net inflow of who's going and who. It's the good people that are going, you know.
Well,
I mean, not all of them. I'm quite happy
If we're talking about entrepreneurs, I mean that they're giving people jobs, maybe. They're, you know what I mean? Like it's other things.
Absolutely. I don't disagree. I mean, it's interesting how the head office very often leaves the UK. You know, maybe the manufacturing base stays and stays in the north. So where you're right, Abraham, is on the quality of the data. So the Sunday Times Rich List reckons there's 2 million. I know it is US dollar, so I know how that stresses you out. I have said it slightly deliberately. They reckon there's 2 million. So you've got a fourfold difference, maybe threefold by the time you factor in currency conversion between Sunday Times based on ONS data and Adam Smith Institute based on ONS data.
They reckon it's 2 million what? Sorry, I don't understand.
Millionaires.
That we have 2 million millionaires still.
Yeah, so the equivalent stats to the other one. So all that tells you nothing other than the quality of the data is rubbish. So until the ONS and until the government find a better way of measuring all this. And to be honest, I'm not sure we necessarily want that in our lives, because if they're all going to come along and value everything we've got, maybe there's a data and an information issue there. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think the stats can be wrong and you can still be right. And that would be very unusual for you because you love a stat. But yeah, we do need an environment where people not only can grow a business, but can exit a business and pay their fair share of that business. Yeah, I would agree. The direction of travel is not.
I think we could have like a whole soapbox episode on the tax regime. On the world.
Abraham would have a stroke, I promise you.
If we could throw it in the bin and we could just start again, you know, how would it look? Just picking up on something you were saying there, Abraham, you know, like earned income and passive income are two very, very different things. Just someone can give 40, 45 hours, assuming you say you're an employee, right? You give 40, 45 hours of your time every single week to a business for half of that to go, right? In some scenarios in tax, if you're a high rate taxpayer and you've got your employee national insurance. But then assets, you know, passive income can be taxed in the same way. And you've kind of got to have a surplus to be able to have the extra to start investing for that to start to accumulate. And then that's why we end up with the haves and the have-nots. And, you know, you look at your portfolios, take your global equity portfolio, your 100% portfolio 2 years ago to now. It's probably done 40, 50%, right? You'll probably have the stat to hand.
He's definitely got that.
You know, somebody that had the good fortune, and I'm not suggesting that they've not worked hard for it, but say someone had, you know, 300 grand to invest at that point, they're now sat with maybe 450,000, right? Compare that to somebody who just can't even get going because the cost of living is so high, and then by the time they've paid their taxes, and so there's got to be something, and that's why I keep this view to myself because I'm in the advice community and they'd hate me for it. But, you know, I get taxing things like gains more highly actually than taxing earned income. But I don't think that can apply to business, because then I think you've got to look at business separate and you've got to say, well, what's that business owner done? What's that business owner given? What have they sacrificed? Who else have they put in jobs? What are the taxes that they paid? So I'd screw it up and throw it all in the bin. I mean, I'm probably making it sound much more simple than it is, but there's some big issues, but we're not incentivizing the right things.
This is where we come full circle. I remember this. We were not, up north somewhere with Ed and my, the few guys on the team, and the market war, the war in, I'm not sure where, is just, started, and the market rebounded for whatever reason. And I was saying, I was looking at my app, my timeline app, and looking at what's gone to the portfolio. And I was like, the world seems to be burning down. The stock market's going up. So which means that, wealth owners, people with, you refer it as passive income or passive asset, their wealth's going up, but the common man is feeling the pinch of oil prices and all these things. And to me, there is no greater validation of the reason to get more people in this country, the 91%, investing. I know that doesn't solve all the problem, but maybe not the 91%, maybe the top, the next 20% of people investing more money, because that is one way to participate in this growth. Assets are already fairly heavily taxed, in the sense that, let's say, most people's wealth will sit in a retirement portfolio. Well, that gets taxed as income when that asset is taken.
Yeah.
So, okay. Then you're left with ISAs, which comes out of earned income, ISAs and GIA. Only about 5% of assets sit in general investment accounts. So, 65% of assets on UK platform, or market assets I'm referring to, sits in pension. So you have another 30% sitting in ISAs, and then 5, maybe 10% sitting in GIA and offshore bonds. So, ISAs, is exempt. So do we want to go back and start taxing ISAs? I don't know. Good luck with whoever brings that on. Then you have general investment accounts, which is like you pay income tax on the dividends or fixed income element, and you pay CGT at 20% on that. I'm not really sure what we want to tax more. Then you go into properties. You have commercial properties, people's homes. I'm not sure what we want to tax more.
I know.
And I'm not sure that we will raise significant amount of money from these things, because people's behaviors will change the minute that we change the taxes. I'm not advocating for look, I'll tell you the reason I think we're all feeling poorer. It's just because as an economy, we're not growing. Since the great financial crisis, we've regulated everything to the hilt. So it's got too much. Then we layered on the disaster that is Brexit. On top of that, we just need to figure out how to start growing again as an economy, so that people can get pay rises, start businesses and succeed, employ more people. That's harder to figure out than just saying, let's tax more and more assets.
Yeah. We've got to earn the money, haven't we? Rather than just trying to take it. It's like there's two ways we could get more money in. We can create more successful businesses, create more successful people, or we can just try and take more of what people already have, right? And in that scenario, it's not going to go down particularly well. But thinking about behaviours, and some of the stats you've used, Abraham, were like pre and post COVID. I think was one of the Alan Smith Institute. I do wonder, did people's behaviours change just as a result of COVID? There were so many people who I know who it fundamentally changed them, because all of a sudden they were locked down and they were just with the nearest and dearest, and they realised that actually they didn't need any of the stuff. And I have noticed since then a lot of people, doing a bit less at work or trying to get the work-life balance better, because they realised that they were building assets and money to buy stuff that when the whole world closes down means nothing. You've just got your family.
Yeah, no doubt. And there is also the realization that to run a business as a person, or to work, is less tied to a physical location. And so all of that feeds into this. In other words, people running businesses can now live elsewhere and still run a business in the UK or whatever. People can, and UK citizens are now competing with international talent for jobs that might be previously have just been physically located in the UK. The world's a different place than it was before COVID, and we just need to catch up with all of that as a country. Anyway, it's not called a SoapBox for with that.
Absolutely.
We need to bring some like zhuzh, don't we? When we were putting together our core values are COVE, C-O-V-E, and E means energy, because we want to bring the energy back. Like everybody feels, so many people feel so bogged down. We're bogged down by this next bit of regulation. We're bogged down by this next change in employer national insurance, which is going to, just bogged down. And we just want to bring like the energy to people to want to grow a business, that curiosity, that excitement to want to grow a business, because there has never been an opportunity as big as there is right now in financial planning, right? We're finally getting there with the tech, which has been horrendously fragmented. We've got this amazing new wave of business owners that are coming through, and they're taking over firms, and they've got a different level of they've got something about them, right? And we've got 91% of the population that we can go after now, because we've got the technology and we've got ways to create these amazing new kind of ways to service these people, be it through advice, guidance, or whatever else. So, but you can have all of that, you can show somebody all of that, but if the energy's flat, like, no, it's like a lethargy. It's like a flatness. And like Gaynor does this thing where she goes like this. So I do it. Like, it's like Gaynor's hup, hup. But it's like we just all need a bloody hup, hup.
Abraham is my personified hup, hup.
Abraham is a hup, hup person, for sure.
He brings the energy. Absolutely. Be more Gaynor is what we're concluding here. Brilliant. Well, that was, we went all around the globe. So and gave everything a really good kicking, which is brilliant. So that probably, given the time of recording, brings another episode of the SoapBox podcast to a wrap. Thank you so much, guys, Vicki and Gaynor, for joining us. That was brilliant. Another good way, if any of our listeners or viewers want to go and get a bit of energy, go and look at the Melo website, which is insanely colourful. Genuinely, guys, thank you for giving up some time, sharing your thoughts. And that's a wrap on another SoapBox. Thank you, Abraham, my brother. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.